So there's a saying that money doesn't buy happiness, and honestly, it seems like something that's too cliche to be true. Just spend your money on hookers and blow, and indirectly, your money is buying that happiness. But I'm starting to believe it is in fact true, and one of the examples, one of the things that has led me to this conclusion is watching the descent into basically madness that Ethan Klein of H3H3 Productions and the H3 Podcast is continuously going through. For some reason, this man is obsessed with Jeremy from the Quartering, with Tim Pool, with all these people who are center-right or on the right, or not even that political but total nerds, and this obsession has crossed into insanely unhealthy territory where Ethan is just consistently lashing out against them for an ever-decreasing amount of views and positive feedback. I mean, the video that we're going to talk about today, at the time of me shooting this video, is somewhere around 45 to 50,000 views. Think about that for a second. Ethan Klein's highlights channel has 1.63 million subscribers, and he's losing subscribers at this point because at certain points in its history, this channel was about 10 times as large as the channel you're watching right now, the actual Justice Warrior. But I guarantee you, based on past behavior, so I'm sure this will get contradicted immediately, that my response to Ethan Klein will get multiples of views more than his initial video. The Quartering's response has already gotten way more views, almost 10 times the amount of views, and again, his channel is equivalent in size to the H3 Podcast highlights, but H3 has his regular channel, he has all this success in all these other places, so he should be raking in the views, but even his own audience don't want to come out and see him melt down over the Quartering anymore. They're sick of it, they're sick of seeing this horrible side of Ethan, and it's really starting to get under their skin, and this is something that can be reflected in the comments and the dislikes to likes ratio. Now, with that being said, before we get into this, we have a sponsor. Before we talk about Ethan Klein's digital career messing up, I was going to say suicide, but you can't say that on the internet, we got to talk about My Digital Money. Let's throw it over them and then come back over here. I'm sure many of you are aware that you could earn hundreds, if not thousands of dollars investing in crypto, but what you might not know is there's actually a way for you to earn money in the crypto space but not pay capital gains tax. And the way to do that is to go over to mydigitalmoney.com and open yourself up a crypto Roth IRA. This is a tax deferred account, meaning that you guys pay the taxes on the assets up front, and when you get your gains all the way when it comes retirement time, that is all tax-free. My Digital Money is also offering, for members of my audience out there right now on the internet.com, a $50 gift for any account that has $1,000 or more put into it and open with them. That's mydigitalmoney.com. Realize the gains of the crypto space without the tax penalties.
We have Quartering updates?
Yeah, some tweets about funneling his dad's balls or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, did we not talk about where we did?
No, we never talked about him fondling his dad's balls.
Wait, okay.
Oh, monsieur.
We talked about when his dad wants. Okay, here, let's read. Discussion with the wife as she watched Our Father. One of the women found out it was her father. We never talked about this?
No.
I don't think
Not on Leftovers?
We had it in the doc, we just didn't get to it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
And we
so
had it on
good,
Friday,
you
too, and
guys.
we didn't get to it.
So the basis for this story is a tweet by the Quartering that honestly is a bad joke. Now, I know a little something about throwing bad jokes out there on Twitter, jokes meant to outrage people, so I can understand from meeting the Quartering, from talking to the Quartering, and even without any of that, just from reading this, that he's going for an edgy joke. He's going for some gross out humor, and it's related to that whole My Father story, which you guys aren't familiar with it. It's the story of an OBGYN who was also a fertility doctor who inserted his own seed into a bunch of different women so that he could father multiple different children. There's a bunch of conspiracy stuff about it, there's documentaries about it, and all these women ended up finding out, I believe, due to 23andMe or due to DNA testing or due to one of them having a medical condition, all these different combinations. So you have a guy that's fathered around 80 children, I believe, and one of the children was actually going to the doctor who was her father, unbeknownst to her, and getting examined and actually sought fertility treatments there so he could have fathered his own granddaughter as well. So it's a really sketchy situation. It's really unfortunate. It's really scary. And it's an interesting documentary. And the Quartering made an awkward take on it. And it's one thing to make fun of this. I could make fun of this. I love making fun of the Quartering. Don't get me wrong. But the bad faith way that Ethan goes after him, the mean-spirited way that Ethan goes after him, is really more reflective of personal issues and inner turmoil that Ethan is suffering from, rather than just mocking the Quartering for a ridiculous tweet and a terrible take. take. Just listen to where he goes before he even finishes reading this tweet.
He's an absolute beast. He talks a lot of shit. He is the face of white purity. I can't get over the white supremacists. Just look at them. They're such fucking inbred freaks. Who wants to live in a country with people that look like that? Like, look at the quartering.
Now again, the story, the joke, all this is about how the quartering tweeted out and tried to be funny about how he'd rather have his dad examine his genitals rather than some random doctor when his wife was grossed out about the Our Father documentary and the situation I just described. But look where Ethan takes it. Ethan is talking about the quartering as a white supremacist. Why he keeps bringing this up, I have no idea. I think it's reflective of something deeply wrong in Ethan's soul, because the quartering doesn't even really talk about politics, much less white supremacy. And the issue in question that he brings up, which we'll get into later, about why the quartering is a white supremacist, is even more absurd. It's one of the furthest things that you would think of when you think of Jeremy from the quartering, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I also want to talk about the fact that Ethan is calling him inbred and talking about how ugly he is and all of these other things. Now, I'm perfectly fine with people insulting other people's appearances. I'm perfectly fine with that happening, but I do need to point out the double standard and the obvious double standard in this scenario. Ethan's title says the quartering is an inbred loser in the title. He's saying it in the first minute of this video, even though YouTube bans people for doing so. Remember that whole thing where Ethan was saying that Leafy couldn't function on the internet.com on YouTube as it was today based on the new rules? This is because Leafy is here would often go after people's physical appearance, and YouTube has significantly cracked down on that. But Ethan, of course, is above the rules. Ethan, of course, has completely different standards. And again, it's not that I want Ethan banned or restricted for this. I just want the rules applied evenly, and the rules that I would like implied evenly is that everybody gets to throw out the insults or whatever on the internet, not just Ethan Klein.
He's an absolute beast. He talks a lot of shit. He is the face of white purity. I can't get over the white supremacists. Just look at them. They're such fucking inbred freaks.
Now, obviously, there's the hypocrisy of him going after Leafy and celebrating Leafy getting banned for doing the same thing, but there's also the double hypocrisy and the idea that Ethan is coming from insecurity from within, of Ethan targeting people specifically for being fat, specifically for looking unattractive, unfit as males, when Ethan himself is slowly gaining weight, and a lot of people have noted is becoming more and more monstrous over the course of the years. As Ethan's personality gets worse, it seems like his outside, according to a lot of people, is matching his inside. That being said, I actually don't think it's cool or kosher to attack people based on their appearance, so I'm not going to be doing that. We never devolve into the mud like that. We would rather attack people's ideas, because I would rather target you in your innermost soul than the thing that you think that I'm obviously going to target you for. But it should be noted that he's obsessed with the quartering's weight. He's obsessed with the quartering looking like a meme of some overweight internet know-it-all, when Ethan Klein fits that mold as well. And many people have pointed out in the comments that his comments related to the quartering's appearance are all things that could easily be used against him, which is just a thing about Ethan being very insecure. And again, dude, you're wealthy, you have a family, you're very successful, you have a bunch of yes men in your studio that constantly tell you, because you pay them to tell you, that you're actually super alpha.
If we're talking about social sexual hierarchy, I'm have a good job, right? I have a wife that I've been in a loving relationship with. I have a family. So I'm fat, basically. Does being fat make me a beta or gamma?
Well, also, like, publicly calling out another person with a huge platform, a bigger one than your own, and going in on them. I mean, again, I don't think any of this is real anyways, but couldn't you argue that that is alpha energy? Like, you're not backing down.
So why does the quartering success of all people bother you so much? Why do you go consistently after his appearance? Why does him being overweight bother you so much? Why does him being hairy bother you so much? Why does the fact that you think his wife is too attractive for him bother you so much?
And I'm sure that, and I don't think quartering has ever explicitly come out as being a white supremacist, but he talks about replacement theory and stuff, right? But he talks about replacement theory and stuff, right?
So right there, Ethan says the quartering has never come out as this out and avowed white supremacist, but he talks about replacement theory. And this is something that Ethan keeps saying about the quartering, yet he has never provided proof or evidence related to it. And honestly, I'm asking people out there in the audience to send me the clips, the tweets, the whatever of Jeremy earnestly talking about immigration at all, let alone the replacement theory. And by the way, this idea that the replacement theory, the great replacement theory, is this evil thing to talk about, this absurd thing to talk about, is a little bit crazy, because the left calls this the browning of America. There's an entire book about how the Democrats will get this overwhelming majority once white people are no longer the majority in the country. This is something that is spoken about quite positively. It's an applause line among left-wing circles, but all of a sudden when the right wing talks about it, or when they just talk about immigration, they're tied into this idea that like some cabal of people are doing this intentionally, when most of the time all that's being talked about is the potential impacts of changing demographics on voting in the future in the United States of America. And by the way, I've actually talked about how ridiculous the obsession with it is overall, because look at the shift that we're seeing among Latino voters, specifically around the issues of crime. It seems like Mexicans and all kinds of other Hispanics, Cubans were already more right-wing, just like other immigrants from communist, socialist, or leftist governments tend to vote right-wing. But overall, Latinos are starting to trend in a similar way that Italian immigrants did, that Irish immigrants did. And the Democrats' plot, according to this theory, to replace the voters and get easy Democratic voters seems to be being undermined by the fact that demographics voting patterns tend to change over time. Trump did way better with Latinos than Mitt Romney in 2016, and then he did even better in 2020, and it looks like Ron DeSantis is going to be carrying that in Florida. It looks like certain Latino counties in Texas are trending more Republican, so we might see this alignment, this great shift of Latinos into the Republican pockets in terms of voting, even though they don't need that many Latinos to shift to them for the Democrats to be never capable of winning a presidential election ever again. Now, that's just my informed analysis of the issue of immigration, of voting patterns over time, of the left's obsession with demographics and how the browning of America is going to lead to this forever majority that they're hoping for, about the conspiracy theories around the sinister intent behind the Great Replacement, or whatever you want to call it. But in reality, we're talking about the quartering in this video, and the quartering, again, I can't imagine him talking about immigration unless he's talking about Klingon immigration in the Battlestar Galactica Trek universe. Yes, I know I said that wrong. Yes, I know you nerds are hating in the comments, but I also don't care.
Dude, his last name's Hambly, dude. Dude looks like a ham. This is the face of white supremacy. Do you know what I mean? Like, these guys talk about racial purity. It's like, dude, what are you trying? If you want to make your genes pure, at least look good, you know, start with something better than this. Like if you're trying to breed like the perfect Yorkshire Terrier, you don't start with like a fucked up freak ass mutant. Do you want a beautiful dog, right? Like if you want, I'm just saying, if you want a perfect white race, start with something better than this. Does anyone co-sign? Like, look at this.
What, that he looks like a dog for
I
sure.
understand the logic.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I love about this is that Ethan's producer on the switchboard cuts to all these other people in his studio, and none of them are laughing before they cut to them. It's only when they're on camera, and after a split second when they notice that they're on camera, that they start chuckling related to this. And the reason why nobody's laughing at this, the reason why Ethan is getting so many dislikes, the reason why his audience is churning on him, is because this is not connected to reality. Jeremy from the Quartering, the grizzly bear from Wisconsin, is not somebody who pushes racial purity. Jeremy from the Quartering, the guy who loves Magic the Gathering and all these other nerd stuff, is not somebody who even talks about immigration policy. This is just Ethan projecting this onto him because Ethan is angry at the Quartering success, maybe. Ethan is angry that the Quartering seems to be happily married. All the things that Ethan is worried about and all the things that Ethan doesn't like criticized about him, he thinks he could take out on the Quartering because Ethan's the kind of guy that kicks people off the ladder after he gets up it or pulls the ladder up behind him because he doesn't want anybody else to succeed. Ironically, these lefties who are all all about share the wealth and all this nonsense, actually have a very much zero-sum worldview. They don't like helping other people out. They don't like succeeding. There's a reason why one of the big criticisms of Ethan's podcast for years is that Ethan refused to have anybody who wasn't already successful on his podcast, somebody with less notoriety than him, because Ethan's not in the business of promoting other people. Ethan is in the business of tearing people down and leeching off of other people's credibility. And I know there's like one specific instance where Ethan had one person on who had less subscribers than him, but I believe that was a 15-minute segment, and he actually stacked another guest on top of that and cut the conversation short because he couldn't be bothered to have this person, who I think made a very nice fan video related to Ethan, take up too much time on his airways, because Ethan's all about Ethan's success, so he thinks that the quartering is actually replacing him in the giant, overweight, grizzly bear, hairy person that's going to be successful on the internet.com.
Ian,
That's true of all white supremacists, you know.
did you just
At least when Hitler was doing eugenics, he would get like perfect Swedish, beautiful women, right? Wasn't he doing that to like mate with Germans? It's like, you don't start with this, bro. I'm just saying. Thank you. Next. Go ahead, Dan.
Just saying.
This white supremacist talk, which again has no connection to Jeremy from the Quartering at all whatsoever, goes on uninterrupted for a solid 5 minutes. Ethan, even at one point, Google image searches white supremacist to find an overweight white supremacist guy so that he can clown on him, because we all know for sure that Ethan is speaking the truth to power by clowning somebody who's in a group of people whose beliefs are rejected by 99% of American society. Really stunning and brave right there.
This is the face of white eugenics. We need racial purity, guys. Like, seriously, if you type, let's type white supremacist. I just can't get over how fucking ugly these people are. Look at this. I'm saying, bro, we don't start with something better. You know what I mean?
And all this is done is to smear Jeremy from the Quartering by reputation, because he has the upper hand in the exchanges that him and Ethan are going through. And by the way, like I said a million times, making fun of the Quartering, A+. Enjoying mocking the Quartering, A+. But, like, you gotta have some good spirits to you. You gotta have some fun with it. It can't be you bitterly lashing out about a guy who seems to also be happily married and is also successful on YouTube and growing in subscribers instead of hemorrhaging subscribers. Otherwise, you're just gonna look like a monster. And if you project all the insults that are thrown at you and that you feel internally about yourself onto him, people are going to notice, and not just people on my side of the aisle, but people in your own comments.
Then
If you want to breed a perfect white race that lives in a fucking stable and eats out of a sloth bucket, start with this. Right?
right?
I mean, again.
For sure.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother. But anyway, I'm talking about the Quartering, of course.
Yeah. Who I don't even know if he espouses.
Google replacement theory and Quartering. I'm pretty sure he's been there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does. Can you imagine, though? Anyway, the Quartering said, discussion with my wife as she watches Our Father.
Now we're almost at the 6-minute mark, and Ethan is going to continue reading the second half of this tweet. He went on a 5-minute rant related to white supremacists and the Quartering just to smear him, because that's the kind of tactics that he learned from people like Jenk's nephew. Just call everybody racist, cover your face, cover your eyes, and tell everybody to be scared. And Ethan, for some reason, still thinks that this is a workable tactic. This tactic, by the way, which Ethan has called out when other people used it, like that humongous chick who was yelling at him saying he abused a woman and he's a white supremacist and everybody who's making fun of her are white supremacists. But all of a sudden now, Ethan is deploying that tactic and he's getting similar results to that Zarna Joshi woman.
Previously, he says, my wife had an emergency landing and caught a ride with another pilot to go to the hangar. Female pilot privilege. The moral of the story is I don't have to go pick her up, and I get to play more video games.
So then he brings up the Quartering tweeting about his wife having an emergency landing and another pilot bringing her home so the Quartering didn't have to go pick her up. And he starts talking about how the Quartering's wife must be having an affair.
And we're like, dude, your wife is getting railed right now. by that pilot. There's no question about it.
Obviously, Ethan a little bit weirded out about the quartering being married for some reason and about his wife actually having an interesting backstory. I didn't realize that she was a pilot until now.
And he responded to me by saying, "Dear Ethan, it's called a joke. Remember those? Maybe stick to hemorrhaging subscribers and running the world's only clothing line designed exclusively for pedos." Now, the hemorrhaging subscribers thing's true. I will stick to that. Definitely can see that. But the clothing line made for pedos, I thought was a very weird, very specific insult.
And the quartering snipes back at him, talking about how the clothing line, Teddy Fresh, seems to be designed for pedos. And by the way, if you look at the clothing line, the bright colors and all this that are meant to be worn by adults, I get where the joke is coming from. But also, all this talk about the clothing line being designed for this person or that person distracts from the most outrageous part about Teddy Fresh. Look at the prices of these items. This costs $115. $115 for this sweater. Look at the price of this hoodie. $80 for this, and then this one's $85. These prices are outrageous. Please, for the love of God, don't buy this. Go to my Teespring store, and you can get 5 items for the price that they're charging for this nonsense. And I'm telling you, as somebody who's been on the other end of producing clothes for sale on the internet.com, the prices of what they're printing this stuff on, this not very nice designs, it shouldn't be this high. They're milking all the money out of you. It's horrible. And their audience is like little kids, so they're milking all the money out of the parents. Ethan's wife makes the clothing line, so obviously this is going to devolve, even though it's a tit for tat, into you're a pedo, which is just a conversation that I'm not that interested in. You guys could go over and watch the video in full if that's something that you're interested in, but I will point out that one of Ethan Klein's reasons for why Keemstar needed to not be on YouTube and not have any sponsors is because Ethan is really upset. He's really ashamed, and he's really angry when people falsely accuse other people of being pedos, which, of course, he then turns around and does for the second time to Jeremy from the quartering, because Ethan has no standards, he has no backbone, and all he can do is go into the mud and fight with people in the mud and become the very thing that he criticizes over and over again.
Okay, now I'm not saying anything. Maybe I'm just saying it takes one to know one. But I'm not one, and the brand isn't one, so that actually doesn't sound good. You know, I don't like that.
Yeah,
that,
no,
that angle.
that's a bad angle
I
to
don't
take.
like that angle. I disavow that angle. Whoever smelt it dealt it. Maybe that's a better angle.
Yeah.
Interesting. Never heard that applied to P-word accusations.
Well, he says
but-
your clothing brand is for P words. I said, well, whoever smelt it dealt it, my friend. Watch this.
What is the age of consent? What should it be in your mind?
Enjoy
Go on
this.
record.
I support whatever law is in place in your current residence. You know,
That's a cop-out, isn't it?
So then they get to a live stream portion of it, and I just want to say it is such a pleasure to hear Devin Tracy, Atheism is Unstoppable, on that live stream. If you guys want to watch Devin's videos, he's still making videos, they're still as great as ever. Go to patreon.com/atheism and subscribe. At $5, you get his whole backlog. He's finishing the Central Park series. If you want to watch Devin and a bunch of people uncensored, he's also on censored.tv. Use promo code AIU for a discount and to ensure that you're supporting Devin over there. Great stuff still out there, and it's funny to have him involved in this conversation that is getting the quartering in hot water.
I support whatever law is in place in your current residence. You know,
That's a cop-out, isn't it?
let's get a real case. Asia Argento, right?
A second thing that I want to take note of is that right after Devin says that's a cop-out, you can see a clear and obvious cut, an edit that is not being revealed, and it's meant to be presented in a deceptive way to change to the subject. Now, I've talked about multiple different times how ethical editing should works, how on this channel I actually use something called a page curl when I'm cutting forward in time, because it's a very visible cut that you guys can see on your screen, and psychologically it indicates to you that the page is churning, thus the passage of time. There is no such very ethical transition in here. It's just a quick cut and the hope that you didn't notice it, and Ethan Klein likely didn't notice it. But again, let's just listen to what the quartering is talking about.
I support whatever law is in place in your current residence. You know,
That's a cop-out, isn't it?
let's get a real case. Asia Argento, right? Asia Argento. You guys, Bearing, you familiar with this? She allegedly groomed a 14-year-old boy and then fucked him when he was 17. Now,
How old she?
she was like almost 40 at that point.
Oh fuck.
Well, she had also worked with him when he was like a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old boy in some Hollywood set.
Why are we focused on that?
Well, no, I'm just trying to take a long. It's a really long example of how I feel. Well, it's hard to say like every 17-year-old boy is created equal, right? But I'm saying like Asia Argento was in her 40s. She fucked a 17-year-old, and the age of consent in California is 18. So she technically broke the law.
So the topic shifts to a woman called Asia Argento, who, if you're not familiar with, is one of the Harvey Weinstein accusers who, it came out, potentially groomed somebody that she knew since age 9 and then slept with them at age 17 and was reported on by that guy as a victim. Now, the quartering is dancing around and he's talking about how the age of consent in California is 18 and not really giving a solid position. As Devin Tracy said, this is in fact a cop-out. But honestly, if it was just a 17-year-old that slept with an adult woman, I wouldn't care because I live in a state where that's legal, and the age of consent in most of the country that we live in right now is 16, 30 of the 50 states. And the way that people talk about how somebody in 17 and 364 days is the equivalent to like a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old or anything like that is just an effect of emotional immaturity amongst the population. Now, on a social level, on a way that I find relationships with significantly older people and significantly younger people to be weird and unfortunate and honestly reflective of desperation on one or both of the parties, I can throw some shame and I can throw some shade at people because we should have stigmas in our society. But in terms of the law, the idea that the United States, Western Europe, and Canada all have legalized pedophilia because the age of consent that most of these places land on is around age 16 is a bit absurd, and it distracts from the victims, which are typically much younger children in the United States of America and in the world over.
In all seriousness, though, if she groomed him from the time he was 14, I think it is a pretty disgusting crime. If she was 40, I can understand if she was 19 and he was 17. I mean, that happens, but 40 and she's groomed him since 14. No, that's fucked.
Chastised.
But isn't that fucked up, right? Like if I'm 16 and let's say a 24-year-old woman, you know, I'm at some like a music festival.
He's so drunk.
He's trash.
24-year-old
Absolutely trash.
It's really hard for me to view that as like a predatory situation. I'm like, yeah. In the Asa Argento situation, she absolutely knew how old he was. And then like, I mean.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about. I was talking about your example scenario of a 24-year-old chick fucking 16. If she knew that guy was 16, yeah, that's fucked. She's committed a crime.
Now, Bering, also good to hear in this moment, has a great point, which is the grooming aspect of it. And when you factor in the grooming aspect of it, I actually do think that even if the person has gotten to an age where they would be at the age of consent in most of Europe or most of the United States, then you have a problem because that's all behavior prior to that person coming of an appropriate age that is being done. And I think Asia Argento, knowing this person since age 9, would fall under that category. And you can see the quartering, who is drinking a little bit, kind of moving in that direction and arriving at that conclusion. But then they shift to the example of a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old dating a 24-year-old. And again, this is much closer in age. It's much more in line with American laws. So I understand why the quartering, especially when he's drunk, is being super casual and trying to entertain in this situation.
But if you're 16 and you get that pussy, do you feel like a victim?
Dude.
Cool.
I'm just saying, it seems like he's doing he's jumping through some mental hoops there. And the fact that he's like blackout drunk, you know, is, you know, he's got no filter there, but it just sounds to me that a man who travels the country playing claw machines, asking for kids' addresses, and talking about how the age of consent is too strict knows a lot more than me about whatever P words want to buy or be or whatever. I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
You can call that an awkward, a bad take from Jeremy from the quartering while he's drunk in that live stream, and I understand it. But let's be real. In reality, whenever an attractive teacher hooks up with an underage student, especially if that underage student is 16, 17, 18, there's a lot of people who are like, nice. There's an entire South Park episode about this and about the double standards that we have in our society. Ethan Klein, I am certain, has made this exact point, and you hear people saying, oh, I wish these teachers, these hot teachers were around when I was around. And again, age of consent in the United States of America, 16 in 30 states. We're talking about a 24-year-old and not a 50-year-old or anything like that, and we're not talking about the same level of grooming in the Asia Argento case. It's a weird instance where they actually went to a weaker example from a stronger example, which I think is not effective in drawing out your point. You should have made it a stronger example, even though Asia Argento is a strong example, because again, age 9 and all that. But again, I'm not going to do this holier-than-thou attitude that Ethan Klein does, especially when we all know in American society, when it's a hot teacher age 20 or mid-20s, and a teenager that is 16 or over, most people, even though the ones that acknowledge that it's illegal or that the teacher should be fired in that situation, have the same cultural response. If you got a problem with that, then maybe you should address the things that definitely people like Ethan Klein have said, definitely a bunch of people in your personal life have said, not get mad at the quartering for making that joke in a joke stream with people like Bearing and Devin Tracy. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about H3H3 again melting down over the quartering. Till next time.